We're going to talk to you about audience insights today. And the way that we look at our audience insight is through these four lenses of profile, who are they, their behaviour, what do they do with you and with other organisations, their attitude towards you and culture in general, and the impact that you're having on them or that the autistic experience is having on them, and the impact that they think you're having on society. So those are the sort of lenses through which we look at audience insight. And it doesn't matter whether, there's different tools that you can use to gather different bits of that data. But the idea is to bring it all together and give you a kind of holistic picture. So that's what we're going to try and do today.
We're going to talk about three things. We're going to talk about audience insights, which is the box office bit. It's the ticketing and customer data with very, very big sample of audience behaviour. We're going to talk about Indigo Share, which is this post-show survey bit, which can tell us a lot more around that. So it fills in the picture around that. And then we're going to do a so what section. What does this mean? What's next for this? So I'm going to start. Okay. Yeah. Oh, that's exciting. That one. Don't press the one at the bottom. Okay, cool. So what are we looking at? We have got 12 insights that we look at each year. One of them changes depending on what the big issues are, and usually they're issues that have been talked about at this gathering that we then explore the following year. It's really based on what the member organisations of Performing Arts Forum, or Theatre Forum as it was then, asked for back in 2022 when we did a big consultation about what you needed to know about your audiences. What we've got now is 2024 compared to 2023, 2022, and then our normal, in inverted commas, is 2019, pre-pandemic. It is box office data, so that means that we're looking at ticket buyers when we look at the customer elements of it, not attenders. And it's ticket buyers who have paid at least €1 for at least one ticket, because we felt that was the simplest way for you to be able to take out people like the media and your staff members and so on, the people who aren't really engaging as a normal, in inverted commas, customer. The total attendance figure is really exciting because it includes all attendances, including unticketed and free events. So that gives a really good picture of the impact. So it gives us a broader picture of what's going on rather than just the ticket buyers. And the big promise we make every single year is that your data is confidential. I am the only person who ever sees your data. What we share is the aggregated sum, and we're always very careful, both Katy and I, that we make sure that none of your confidential data is recognisable. So if you ask us questions, we'll go, sorry, we can't answer that, because we might identify an organisation. So what are we looking at? We are looking at the 1.1 million tickets worth 25 million euros that were bought by 309,000 individual customers for 7,600 events at 34 organisations, including large-scale venues with more than 500 seats, festivals, and two sorts of venues under 500 seats, depending on where they're located. So what do we got? What are we looking at? Well, hurrah, we have got more good news. Seats put on sale are up 12%. Why is this good news? Because the issue at last year's gathering that came up over and over again was, as somebody said, not enough loaves, let alone fishes, just simply not enough events to be able to sustain audiences. And we could literally see the drop in audiences comparable to the drop in events and seats put on sale. The tickets sold, on average, up 15%. Percentage capacity, so that is the percentage of the seats that are actually occupied is up as well. And it's great news because we are now within a whisker of 2019's figures. So we had a big increase last year, big increase this year. We are now back to, in inverted commas, normal. Thank goodness for that. So this is the interesting one. Gross ticket income is up 31%. That seems huge. But the average price paid is only up 10%. So actually what audiences are seeing is an increase of €1.32 on average. So that's reasonable. And it's mainly the smaller venues that are doing the bigger increases in prices because their base was so low. The increase in larger venues has been a bit lower than that. There are, however, big differences between the different types of organisations. So for large-scale venues over 500 seats, and that also includes the Gate and the Abbey, we're up 17% in terms of tickets sold. For smaller venues, but in large urban conglomerations of more than 20,000 people, up 6%. They had a really big increase last year, so I'm really impressed that that growth has continued. Smaller towns, the venues, art centres in particular in those towns, are up 10%. We've had a bit of a shift in the type of venue in that because we've been joined by some much smaller rural art centres that have become, sort of, I suppose, professionalised really over the past couple of years. And then finally, whoops, festivals down 22%. That is a huge drop. But what that highlights is the importance of looking at all the insights together because there's a very good reason that that's down. So 22% drop. Part of it is because they are doing much fewer events, these festivals, apart from one. What they're also doing is doing fewer, bigger events. So the tickets put on sale is down, good 29%, but it's smaller than that 44%. So some of the festivals are putting on bigger events in bigger spaces. But what it's about is a shift in the programming focus. So this is the attendances that includes unticketed and free events, and that is up by 55%. So that's a shift in the way that most of those festivals, I think really all but one, are engaging with audiences. It's about doing far more free, big, on the street, visible stuff. So if we take the festivals out of our big pot, the increase that the other venues in particular have achieved is really stupendous. It's absolutely amazing. And almost every single venue is up. So hurrah, at last. Big question is, how did we do it? Yeah, well, I think it's really straightforward, actually. If you remember, last year, we had a really positive upshift in audience engagement, but I was really kind of quite worried by some signals that all was not well. So if we compared 2023 with 2019, there was what we called a triple whammy, and there was a drop in tickets sold. Compared to 2019, it was a huge increase on 2022. And that triple whammy was fewer first-time ticket buyers on average, fewer people kept from the previous year, and more people going to just one event and then disappearing. So those three things together are really problematic. It signals a potential for a shrinking audience. Why? Well, not enough shows. That was a really key factor, and we could see that in the patterns. But largely it was because we couldn't communicate with audiences. So literally, on average, the organisations in last year's project could not communicate, did not have permission to communicate with almost 2/3 of their audience. So, how are you going to get them to come back if you can't communicate with them? Well, the brilliant news is, how have we done it? How have we got that big increase this year? Well, it's because you fixed it. A factor really is the increase in the number of events available. So programming and the volume of program really does have an impact on audiences. But first-time ticket buyers are down. That's a good thing, because it means you're keeping more audiences year on year. So up 11%, which is just brilliant. And then people coming to at least 2 events is up 5%. So literally, that is how you have grown audiences. And hallelujah to that. Why? Because, well, you've all been working really hard at marketing permissions, and that's up 19%. So, congratulations everybody who's been really focusing on achieving those targets. But, it's going to be a but, isn't there? We had 163,202 first-time ticket buyers at, just those 34 organisations. That is amazing. But if that reduced, but still significant kind of attrition occurs, we're going to lose over 109,000 of them. So we cannot relax. If we're going to continue to grow, we have to continue to capture those first-time ticket buyers. We can't go on like this. We really can't. We're running out of first-time ticket buyers. So I've got some questions, really. If we're going to keep them, if we're going to retain far more of them rather than continuing the hamster wheel, we need to understand what are they like, where do they live? Is it because they're tourists that they're not coming back? Why did they come? Why don't they come back? And how do they find out about stuff so that we can actually engage them? If we can answer those questions, we'll understand what we need to change in order to engage audiences. So how are we going to find the answers? Katy, come and tell us. Oops.
No pressure then, thank you.
Don't press the button.
I won't press the button at the bottom, thank you. Right, well, there's a challenge. It's a bit early for all this data, isn't it? I have to say, all these numbers and graphs and stuff, so I apologise for that, but I hope you've had lots of coffee. Okay, so, Indigo Share Island. So, this is our collective survey that a number of you take part in. And the way it works, forgive me for just explaining how it works, it's quite important that you understand this. So, each organisation that is part of this sends out a post-show survey to its audiences. Most of them send it out after every show. Most of them actually have it automated so that it can just go automatically. So once it's set up, it just runs and asks and sends it out. Each organisation that sends it out can see their own results for their own audiences at the click of a button, so they can see that themselves. But again, similar to Heather's approach, we then aggregate all of that data that comes into us centrally. It's all anonymous because the organisation sends the emails out, we don't send them out. The results come back in and we aggregate the findings. So what I'm going to share with you now is the aggregated findings from all of that data for the whole of 2024. And it's the first full calendar year that we've had on Indigo Share Island. So it's fantastic to have all that data in there. So we can show you the big picture of all of that aggregated data, but it is also worth saying there are some individual differences for individual organisations. So if you're one of the organisations taking part, what you need to do is look at your results and then compare them with these sort of benchmark results to see how you're different from the benchmark. But what we're going to try and do here is pull out some findings from that aggregated data to see what it tells us in answer to some of Heather's questions. So, the Ireland Benchmark 2024, this is the first time we've been able to do a whole year, which is fantastic. We have nearly 14,000 responses from 17 cultural organisations. Again, I think that's the biggest data set we've had of surveys. which is just fantastic. So thank you to all of you who've been part of that. In the surveys, 15% of people said they were first-timers to the organisation. So that's quite different from the box office data, and there's all kinds of reasons for that, which we can go into later. But these are people who said they were first-timers to the organisation. Half of them travelled less than 10 kilometres, and 6% are under 35. So we've made some comparisons with the Irish census where relevant, because one of the questions that I'm always asking is, okay, so what? But how representative are our audiences of our communities that we serve and of the population at large? These are the 17 organisations that are taking part at the moment. We have 2 festivals and 15 venues. We'd love to have more festivals, because then I could actually show you any significant differences between festivals and venues. At the moment, I can't do that, because with only 2, it would be too obvious who they are, and anonymisation is important. So if you're a festival and you'd like to get involved, please talk to us, because it is free. Oh, what's this doing now? Okay, so going back to this model then, I'm going to show you the survey results through these 4 lenses. So first of all, looking at profile. So who are our audiences and how representative are they of the Irish population? Well, 54% of arts audiences are over 55, and that compares with 31% in the census. 25% of arts audiences have children living with them, which is pretty similar to the census. And 6% of arts audiences say they're disabled. That compares with 8% in the 2022 census who said they experience health conditions or are disabled. Oh no, so hang on, wait a minute. No, 22% of census respondents say that they have a disability or a health condition. We didn't ask the question in exactly the same way, so we can't draw that comparison, but that's just for context. Audiences are drawn from all income levels, so we can see that just over a third have a higher salary than the island average, but 44% lower salary. I also do this in the UK. That's a very different story there, so well done. Okay, behaviour. So how are they behaving? So this is the second bit. So maybe unsurprisingly to all of us, the particular production or to see a particular performer or company is the main reason that people are coming. This is asking what their motivations are for attending. But interestingly, the social experience is also quite high up there. So spending time with friends and family is 23%, and a treat for a special occasion is also on there at 8%. These are some of the things that people put. So in the survey, there's the opportunity to put free text comments, which the individual organisations can also read. And these were the sort of 3 key themes that came out of that, where they ticked other and then put some... so there were a lot of people visiting from out of town. So this is interesting when it comes to looking at first-timers. Is it that these first-timers, these elusive first-timers, is it hard to get them back because actually they're coming from out of town and therefore they're more difficult to get back? Again, supporting the arts comes out very strongly, and this is something we've also seen in the corresponding survey we do in the UK. This is coming much higher up the mix since COVID, that people are conscious of the need to support their local arts organisation, and that kind of threat and jeopardy of it being lost, it was certainly brought into kind of sharp focus during COVID. And so that we're seeing, and that's a good thing. So we definitely need to be leaning into that because there's this positivity to support you. And then this thing about encouraging children, encouraging the next generation, encouraging children to be creative. Really, really important. And for there to be such a large proportion of arts organisations that have children living at home, I wonder how many of those have actually attended with children. Are there more opportunities to sort of lean into that family programming, that, especially with first-timers? If they've come without children, could you persuade to come back with their children? So if we look at the difference between returners and first-timers, again, you can see that it's about the particular production, or even more so, the particular performer or company. First-timers are in orange, returners are in grey. Interestingly, the returning people are much more likely to say it's about the art form. So those people are dance junkies or music junkies or whatever. And the social interaction, spending time with friends and family, again, very strong there. But interestingly, the treat for a special occasion is higher with first-time attenders. So if you want to try and get those first-time attenders back again, some of those more social aspects might be interesting, and that's something that we've definitely seen in the UK as well. A lot of organisations now offering celebration packages and special occasion packages, and really seeing a big take-up in terms of those. Social media is outstripping pretty much everything else, and actually you can see that these top two boxes are both about peer recommendations. So I know we were having an interesting debate yesterday about the importance of critical review, but actually one of the biggest influences on people coming to a show is what people like them in their social network are saying about it and recommending it either in person or on social media. Now, we don't know whether recommended by friends and family, we don't know how many of those people were recommended on a WhatsApp group or on Facebook or on social media. So, but there's definitely, these are higher than I've seen in a long time, the kind of social, the peer network. And interestingly, there's, I think I've said this to you before, there's a barometer that's done every year called the Edelman Trust Barometer. It's American, you can tell from the name, can't you? And interestingly, and not very surprisingly, people are asked on that, it's all about who do you trust. And in America, obviously, the trust for the government has gone right down. But people used to trust institutions, they used to trust the media, they used to trust reviewers and things like that. Now, the thing they're most likely to trust is someone like me, which is very worrying, I think. But that's where we are. So if they're most likely to trust someone like them, getting people to share these experiences and leaning into that is kind of where we're at. Because we've only got 1 year of Irish data at the moment, this is just to show you we've been doing this in the UK for longer, so we can see the shifts that have happened in the marketing channels. These are the marketing channels that UK theatregoers say they have heard about the show through. So what we can see is there's big shifts, but it's sort of levelling off, and it sort of seems to be settling. That email from the organisation has kind of plateaued out at 37%. Social media has been climbing, and that's at 28%. And the brochure and the print has gone from 31% in 1920 down to just 12% now. Now, this isn't to say abandon your print and get rid of your brochure at all. You need to figure out what's right for your audience. And of course, the difficulty with emails and social media is they're largely invisible in the physical environment. So that's fine if you've got permission to talk to people and you increase permission to talk to people and you can be, you know, having all of those conversations online. It doesn't help for getting new people in or people who you haven't got permission to talk to. So you still need visibility in the physical environment. And social influence, that peer networking, is even more important for first-timers than it is for returners. I mean, obviously, they're not going to have had an email from the organisation because they're not on the mailing list. And they're less likely to have been on the venue website. But it just shows, and actually when we look at this across the board, you know, the social media and the recommended by friends and family is so much higher. You've really got to work on your own audiences to tell other people is very, very important. So it'll be no surprise that audiences aren't travelling very far. So 40% are coming under 15 minutes and 54% coming under 10 kilometres. I know that one of the sessions that's going on next door at the moment is all around sustainability, but 64% of Irish audiences travelling by car, I understand, rural environment, but that will be an interesting thing to track. We've been tracking that in the UK now, and it's gone from 75% when we started tracking it, and this year is the first year it's gone under 50%. And a lot of venues have been doing a lot of work on that, so that's fantastic to see. Again, you can get this as well from your box office data, but a third book within a week of the event, and we've all experienced that, I think, getting worse since COVID. And those with children at home are more likely to book earlier, as we know. I mean, it makes sense, doesn't it? But it's good to see that they're the planners. So, but the interesting thing there is if we want to encourage them to attend, it's no good sending them last-minute offers because they're not going to do it. They need more time to plan, and they probably need more reassurance about how it's all going to work. And those who did book late, like, why didn't they book earlier? It's gone a bit funny, but can I see that on here? It's gone a bit weird. That's really unhelpful, isn't it? Let me see what it says. We will be able to send you these slides.
Well, what we're going to do is next week we'll put them up on the Performing Arts Forum website, so you can see them all, and there'll be the full report from Audience Insights as well. It's worth saying, first-timers, 50% of them live further away than 30 minutes. So, your core audience lives very locally. But actually 50% of them are exactly in the same catchment as your normal audience. Yeah. So half of them are there available to be grabbed again. Yeah?
Yeah. Cool. So that top one actually says, if I can take my glasses off, it says, I didn't know if I would be available. And that is, I think it's 54%. And the second one, which is 21%, I just didn't get round to it. Okay. Yeah, helpful. But I didn't know if I would be available. So I know we've had this conversation before, but what are you all doing about refunds and exchanges? Because if people could book and then go, well, I know if I can't then make it or something else comes up, that I can get a credit and then spend that on something else. Personally, I wouldn't be offering them refunds. I'd be offering them credit because then they've got to spend it with you, and I'd make sure you have an expiry date on that credit, which should probably be 1 year's time, so you can grab it back if they don't spend it. But we know from after COVID, when people generously put these refund and exchange policies into place, a lot of people have reversed them again. And I know it's difficult if you've got producing companies coming and all that kind of stuff, but I do think that this could be something that would certainly encourage me. I mean, I managed to get Oasis tickets, just saying. But I booked them like a year or whatever before I'm going. And I hate doing, I love getting my Oasis tickets, but I hate booking things that far in advance because you just don't know what's going to happen. And it's a lot of money. Now, in most cases, what you're asking people to shell out isn't Oasis kind of money, and it's not that far in advance. But if they're saying, I just didn't get round to it, and I don't know if I'm going to be available, could we remove some of those barriers, make it easy for them? Okay, so Net Promoter Score is the famous question that you've probably all been asked on surveys. Would you recommend this to a friend or family member or colleague? To what extent? And you rate it from 0 to 10. And this is a standard measure that's used across all industries. And the brilliant thing is that an NPS score of 70 is really high. So it goes from minus 100 to plus 100. So it's not 70%, it's like all the way from 0 to 100 and then another 70 across. And in order to get that 74% of people who are promoters, they have to have answered a 9 or a 10. So 3/4 of people who are responding to this question are saying 9 or 10 in terms of how likely they would be to recommend you to friends and family. That is outstripping Apple, most, major brands. It's definitely outstripping Ryanair. So that's really, really good. And it's kind of, well, so what, Katy? That's just great. Let's just all feel good about that. But so what? Well, this is when it gets interesting, because if you compare that, the average there, with returners at 73, so they're even happier, more likely to recommend you. Ooh, what's going on with first-timers? So, okay, it's still high. Let's not, beat ourselves up too much, but it's considerably, they're having the same experience as the other people. They've been to the same show, but fewer of them are willing to recommend you to friends and family. Why is that? What's going on? So we need to understand that. Is it the actual experience they're having in the venue? We'll have a look at that in a minute. Is it that they just live too far away and therefore, there's no point in me recommending my friends and family because they live an hour away, or I don't have any friends and family. That's a bit sad. So that's something to keep an eye on, I think. So this is the quality of the visit. So on the right-hand side, you can see the percentage who rated these things excellent or good. So ease of access, 91% rated it excellent or good. Now, that was asked of everyone. That wasn't asked just of the people who said they had an access need. But we'll come back to that. Seating, 86%. Toilets, 90%. That's brilliant. Bar, 83%. Catering or food, a lot lower. Now, we know that a lot of you don't have catering or food, but those people have been taken out of this. So the people who are experiencing catering or food are not having a great experience. In fact, 26% of them, oh no, that's average. Yeah, but you can see that only 63% are saying it's excellent or good. So there weren't any particular differences here, were there, Heather, between first-timers and returners? So in terms of how they're rating the quality of their visit, it's similar. But if you put that together with the fact that people are coming for a social experience, they want to spend time with friends and family, and a high proportion of first-timers are coming for special occasions, if the catering and food element is not good when it's there, that could be a factor. And the staff get the star prize, because if you had to give our staff an overall rating, how would we score? 96% excellent or good. So if there's one thing you take back to your organisation from this data, is to tell all of your staff how brilliant they are, because audiences are understanding how brilliant they are. Okay, so we then asked ease of access. So we then looked at just the people who'd said they had an access need and asked them how the ease of access question. And the good news is that 82% of them also said it's excellent or good. Value for money. So again, brilliant or good. We're okay on tickets. We're sort of okay on programmes. Oh dear, but drinks and food, not good in terms of value for money. Okay, so that's all of that. And then we've got some metrics on impact. So in terms of the impact that the experience is having on people and the impact that they think you're having on the community. So first of all, their sort of personal impact of the autistic experience. So these are a set of statements that we asked people to rate how much they agreed with them. And the numbers down the right-hand side show the percentage that agreed or strongly agreed with these statements. It felt good to be sharing the experience with other people. 89%. 89%. And we're going to come back to this, but how many of us actually use that as a selling point? Our competition is Netflix. It's the sofa. It's getting people off the sofa. So if 89% of people are saying that actually sharing an experience with other people was something that really resonated with them, how are we promoting that? I hardly notice the time passing. So this suggests to me that people are fully absorbed in what's going on. So 86% of people were fully absorbed. If you could sell a drug that helped people escape from their everyday lives and felt lively and enthusiastic when they came out and hardly noticed the time passing, completely absorbed them so that they had a sense of well-being and escapism, you charge quite a lot of money for that drug. And that's what we're delivering. But how often do we talk about that? How often are we just going, here's a show, and it's a story, and it's this, and it's that? How much are we selling the actual experience in the escapism? And then these last two are really about the individual production, and they're much more useful for the individual organisations to look at because they do vary. You know, if you're coming to a big night out kind of show, you're not going to find it very moving. You'll probably feel very lively and enthusiastic. But if you come to something quite provocative, then you're probably going to feel challenged and provoked. But not everything is designed to do that. So this is much more about understanding the individual piece of work and whether your intention in terms of what it was going to deliver for audiences was what they got from it. So it's less useful at the aggregate level. Then we asked them what impact they feel you're having on the local community. And 95% of people saying this organisation is important to our local community. So if you're part of Indigo Share, dig out that figure for your organisation, go and put it in front of your stakeholders and your local authority members, because audiences are really appreciating how important we are to the fabric of a local community. And how do we lean into that? How do we start to really tell that story more? Makes me feel welcome and included, 90%. Leads the way for culture in the area, 87%. This is great stuff, great data. Appeals to a wide range of people. So all of that should be really valuable data for you. Open to those with access needs, reflects my own cultural heritage, and then, demonstrating a clear commitment to environmental responsibility. This is something that we've been working on a lot in the UK. We did a survey called Act Green with audiences for 3 years running, which asked audiences what role they felt cultural organisations should be playing in the climate emergency. And it was a great surprise to all of us quite how important, much more importance they place on it than we had anticipated. And the good news is that we'll come up with some slides at the end, but we're going to be doing the same survey here in Ireland if people want to take part, because it will give you data on what your audiences think you should be doing about sustainability and what's important to them.
It's worth saying that this is better than last year.
It is better than last year, yeah, it has improved a bit. So those of you who are talking about it. And the biggest reason that people aren't giving this a high score is they're saying they don't really know what we're doing. So it's about communication in a lot of cases. It isn't necessarily an indicator that you're not doing enough. It's perhaps just that audiences aren't seeing what you're doing, or they're not understanding, or we're not communicating it in a way that they're getting it. Okay, so what do we do with all of that then, Heather?
Yeah, it's interesting because first-timers were much less engaged in those final two sorts of feedback about, you know, the role of the organisation in the community. I suppose that's not really surprising if half of them live further away, but it also shows that we're not telling them about all of those things, those first-timers just not getting that message. So I think that's one of the really important things that we need to do. We need to be able to communicate these things to people. So we've got to get more of the first-timers to come back, otherwise we're going to run out of first-timers. I keep saying that, but you know, we are going to at some point run out. And then we're going to need to get people to see more than one event, because if they come back once, they're twice as likely to attend the following year, to buy tickets the following year. So getting them to come back at one time makes such a huge difference with their attitudes to the organisation. So what do we need to change? How are we going to do this? So we've got to increase marketing consent. You know, not being able to talk to 2/3 of the audience is not great. So I'm going to show you two anonymous organisations. They're both venues, but that's all I'm going to say. This one increased its marketing consent by 27% because they worked at it. And actually, I don't think they did anything complicated apart from do the easy stuff like put the mailing list button above the fold so you didn't have to scroll to see it, and said what you're going to get rather than just go join the mailing list. Oh, yip-de-doo.
They did change from consent to
they
legitimate
did.
interest.
Oh, I'm telling you fibbies. I'm telling you fibbies, they did. Okay. But lots of people have had this kind of increase and didn't do complicated things. But 27% is just amazing. And then they kept 34% more of the audience from 2023. And the people attending 2 or more events, up 25%. Why? Because they could talk to them. Contrast it with Venue B, marketing consent down 17%, and I'm not quite sure how they managed that. 5% down on the continuing attender, and 15% down on people coming to more than one show. We've got to communicate with our audiences, and getting permission to do that is really, really important.
Is it worth saying we're going to be running a session on that online? I can't remember the date. You remember the date?
No, I can't either.
In a couple of weeks.
Yeah, it's mainly focused for festivals, but it's relevant to everybody.
Yeah. So if you are still using, at the point of sale, a tick box that says, would you be happy for us to send you marketing stuff, or whatever you put on the question, you will get about 4 in 10 people ticking that box. If you move across to something called legitimate interest, which is completely legal, it's what Aer Lingus use, it's what loads of organisations use, and lots of venues have switched across to that, you will probably get double that. So if you want to know how to do that, come along to our session. All the resources are there. If you're on TicketSolve have developed loads of how-to guides and all kind of stuff. If you're not doing it, it's a bit of work, but once you've done it, it's such an easy win, and you will see these kind of results.
Brilliant. Fantastic. So, what's the next thing we need to do?
Well, we need to think about what we're selling, don't we? Because what are we selling? I think in a lot of cases, we go, well, it's the show, stupid. So if we go back to our Heineken ad.
Look what I got.
Oh my God, what time is it, Heather? Why have we got beer at this time?
Yeah, I bought
this is what she had in her bag from last night.
8 o'clock this morning. The bar staff were a bit surprised. Yeah, look, this one's 0%, look. This one's full pure malt lager.
Pure malt lager, yeah. You're not getting me with that. Why am I gonna be interested in something? It doesn't mean anything. They're just green bottles.
Oh.
It doesn't tell me anything. What were they selling in that Heineken ad? They didn't mention beer once. They were selling that experience, that being together. And I think that's something we need to think about, how we do that. You know, it's priceless. And it's about features versus benefits. So, like, what are the features of your bottle of beer?
Well, the facts, I suppose, yeah. 0%.
Malt.
Pure malt
beer.
lager.
Yeah, all of that stuff. So here's something from Heineken's website. This is not an ad, but they're basically saying we'd make lots of different beers, and we even make cider, and we've got all these different brands. Like, that's not going to make you go out and buy Heineken. The ad you saw earlier might, but this isn't. That's a feature. Oh, and doesn't that look a bit like this? Maybe? I've only embarrassed English organisations, haven't picked on any of you, so. That's a feature. That's not doing anything for me in terms of getting me excited about why I should go to this arts centre. Oh, and then here's the nutritional information for the beer, because we all need that, don't we, in order to get drunk. So, you know, that again, that's not going to sell me a beer. And isn't that a bit like this? Like, I don't know who these people are. I have no idea I don't even know how to say the first one, behaviours. It's like, what is that? So unless I'm in the club and in the know, that means absolutely nothing to me. There's no benefit. That is a feature.
And isn't it interesting that the first-timers didn't seem to know, didn't seem to respond to all those amazing things that our core audience were responding to? They came, we can see from Katy's data, they came because they wanted to see a particular production or a particular performer, or because they were taking their partner out because it was their anniversary or something like that. There isn't a reason to come back if you're just giving them facts about a whole load of other shows. Those shows are not the things that they came to in the first place. So we have to give them values and motivations and social reasons for coming back. But we're not, we're just giving them the facts.
So, this is another Heineken ad. Get your mates around for a frothage, a sizzle, celebrate whatever you call us, pint of beer. Okay? They're not the nutritional information, they're not we do 10 different beers. It's starting to get into that, more of that, oh yeah, we're together. This is one of the, can't find many arts examples, but this is the closest I could find. This is the City of Birmingham Symphony Orchestra, where I live. And they launched their season, called it A Season of Joy. So I thought, okay, they're sort of trying to make it more about the Berlioz and whatever it is.
I love the turn up the joy thing in the background.
And they're using this turn up the joy thing. They also happen to have a wonderful Japanese conductor who jumps about a lot and is full of joy, which does help. And then this is, I love this one because this is Glyndebourne Opera Festival in England. And this is their YouTube video, Top Tips for First-Timers, and it's actually presented by first-time attenders. And they're sitting on a rug and having a picnic. It isn't some big fat woman singing opera, which is what you usually get about opera. So I suppose the provocation that we're putting to you lot is, how do we switch from talking about features and instead talking about benefits or reasons to come? And not just here's a list of stuff.
Yeah, I mean, cast your eyes back to yesterday and picture that beautiful fluorescent orange jumpsuit that Zoe was wearing. What did Zoe do? Zoe captured your permission to send you information and exciting things about the Cork Collective. And she also persuaded you to sign up by talking about the values around that compelling manifesto that she had. She promised that you would be involved, she promised you a say, and she promised that you would belong. You know, hallelujah, I just sat there and wept for joy. It was perfect. And the jumpsuit.
And what do we do? Join the mailing list. Yeah, got to do a bit better than that. Cool. So,
we've got 3 minutes to go.
We have.
Shall we produce the football?
Yeah, because there might be great ideas out there that are better than ours. Go on, Heather.
Yeah. Can I chuck it? Has anybody got any questions?
Questions or thoughts?
Questions or thoughts or comments or?
That's a bit early.
Oh, please. I've been
stunned them all.
trying to throw this.
Oh.
Hi.
Oh, great.
Yeah, the first one was, one of the first slides was there have been 1.1 million tickets sold. That's overall including the free or not the free?
Not the free.
So, and it was a 25 million total sold. So the average ticket is €2.50. Okay, that's an interesting insight. Is there any division regarding the type of shows, like is dancing more engaging than music, or something about the genres that we can dig into?
Unfortunately not, because the funding for this project was cut. So we now have to keep it really simple. But way back, I think the last data we got is 2016, where we did all the art form breakdowns and everything. There was something like 100 insights, but now we've got 12.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's better than nothing.
Yeah, and to your right.
Hi, I'm Mary Claire from Monton in Dundalk. There's something that we've kind of seen at Box Office in relation to first-time ticket buyers that I'm just curious to know if other organisations are also witnessing. So there's definitely a percentage of first-time ticket buyers that are not first-time attenders. Their sister buys the tickets or their wife buys the tickets, but we see them in the organisation all the time, and then they'll rock up and go, oh yeah, no, you don't have my data, I'm not in your system, I've never bought a ticket here before, but you know they're in the organisation. I'm just curious in terms of this information and like how that's kind of skewing that data a little, and if other organisations are experiencing the same.
There was a very, very big piece of research in the UK, because it's quite complicated doing this, because you have to go and talk to a very large sample of people face to face. And what they identified was that about 3/4 of people always bought the tickets. So and there was another big piece of research that said that they were sort of bossy organisers, and you know, they were the ones who said, right, friends or right, family, we're going to go and do this, that or the other. About 15% of people never bought their own tickets, and then there was a batch of people in the middle who sometimes did and sometimes don't. But that batch of people in the middle is quite small. So I've been doing things like aggregating people by household. Actually, the percentage of the reduction in the number of ticket buyers is relatively small. It's never more than about, 15%? So I think we can live with that, really, can't we? Yeah. But it's great you're noticing them.
And we did a piece of work last year called Tomorrow's Audience in the UK, which actually we got all the organisations to send out to people who looked like first-timers on their database and then asked them if they'd ever been before. And a lot of them had been to the organisation before. A good proportion hadn't, and then we were really interested in those people, so we wanted to talk to them. But yeah, I mean, there's always, and you can see the difference in the survey data from the box office data. You know, 15%, only 15% of people in the survey said they're first timers. But for me, what's interesting is the ability to then split out and look at the differences between the people who say they're first timers in the survey, so we can be confident on what those people are saying because they've identified themselves as first-timers, and compare those with the people who say they've been before, so we can be really confident in those data points.
I think there's also an issue that because we're not communicating with first-timers about all our lovely values, they don't love us as much, so they're less likely to fill in the survey.
That's really helpful, thank you.
One right at the back, good luck.
Connor, you throw it. I'm not
okay.
Somebody's got to get up and chuck it.
Oh, we need a basketball player here, right up at the back on the left. Yeah.
Oh,
Whoa, so close. That was so impressive.
Hi. This is more of a question for other organisations as well. We've just been through some of our data from Katy and are learning that a larger percentage of our audience seem to be older. And I'm wondering if, in your experience, is that because some people are better at opening their emails and clicking through than others? I'm just interested if, as an observation. Because I guess we knowing our audience from observing them, we feel we have a younger audience than that, which means perhaps some are not filling in the forms and others are, and does that skew the data? Oh, there's Louise.
Well, I guess my comment, it's more a comment, but it's very much related to that. I'm really curious about in terms of the younger, you know, you have a really small percentage of the younger generations under 35 are coming. And is there other data that we can look at why they're not coming? And I would just say that 30 years ago, I was having conversations in theatre and people looking around, everybody's really old. Theatre is going to die in the next 10 years because there's no young people coming. And I've had that conversation over and over and over again for the last 30 years, and yet it isn't dying. So I'd love to know why they're not coming and what does make them come. And I'm curious about in a sense, I don't know if older people do have the more time to click into their email, but certainly I don't know if that's why, are we not reaching younger people but we should be reaching them via social media. Anyway, it's all of that.
Yeah, I mean, we know that fewer young people open email and they're more likely to be on social media. So we do know that. But we also know that more first-timers are young people through the research that we've done. I mean, it kind of makes sense, doesn't it? that first-timers are more likely to be younger, but they are. So yeah, I mean, but social media is where the young people are, so we need to be engaging with them there.
Just building on that, it is interesting that statistically the social media is the area where now more audience are engaging, and yet even though we think of the younger generation as the digital natives, they're not in fact increasing in numbers. So are they not engaging on the social media that we're engaging on? These kind of questions I think are interesting in terms of that generation.
And I think that's really difficult because the algorithms in social media work in such a way that if you're a small arts centre or a small theatre company, how are you going to cut through and get into that space where they are? Because it's all driven by volume. And so it's really, really hard to inject yourself into that conversation. Because they're basically seeing stuff that everyone else is seeing because it's all done on volume.
Sadly, we've run out of time, but we've got one more thing to talk about, very briefly, just to flag up.
This is just to show you the Act Green survey that we're launching in Ireland. So this is an opportunity, if you want to understand what your audiences think about sustainability, how important it is to them and what role they think you should be playing, you can take part free. You just need to sign up with this QR code and we'll be asking you to send out a survey to as many of your audiences as you can probably in July or August. So plotting that into your email schedule to get that out, and we'll be able to share the findings of that in the autumn. The other thing to say is if you're not part of Indigo Share Ireland and you would like to be, it is free to take part. So if you want to be part of this data set of the surveys and the post-show surveys, talk to me or get in touch with me at Indigo or via Performing Arts Forum. It's really easy to set up and we'd love to have your data in so that the 2025 data is even bigger.
Absolutely. And I think the same applies to my element of this, the audience, that last year we had 42 organisations participate, this year we had 34. And there are two things going on, which is that there's definitely a reduction in skill level in box offices, so I can see the pressure that they're under and I can see the difficulty that they have with, dealing with the ticketing system. But also, it is partly about communication within your organisation. So, please, please, please think about participating. The more people who participate, the more clear we can be about, where we go, what is next for the arts in Ireland and their audiences. So, thank you very much for listening.
Yes, thank you.